Thank God this incredible HFY masterpiece found you today. Witness the legend starting now. The Vexthor Integrity Chamber sat in the heart of Epsilon 7 Station, like a metallic god that had grown bored of worship but still expected it. For 10,000 years, this machine had tested every material the galaxy threw at it. Exotic alloys, and GT music, and GT that could withstand the crushing pressure of gas giants, polymers that music laughed at, temperatures hot enough to vaporize, lead, crystals that bent physics just enough to make engineers' music weep with joy. And in those 10,000 years across roughly 3.6 million tests, the machine had never once malfunctioned. Not even a hiccup. Not a single errant calculation. Not one moment where it paused and made the galactic equivalent of a Windows error noise. The chamber itself was beautiful music. In that way only engineers could appreciate. All flowing curves of burnished music. Metal that seemed to ripple with internal light surrounded by hovering diagnostic panels that music displayed. More data than most species' entire scientific databases. It was roughly the size of a small building, humming with music power that could probably run a small moon. And it radiated an aura of music. Absolute reliability that made hardened space captains feel safe, and insurance adjusters sleep peacefully. Music. At night, the Vexthor had built it naturally. They built everything music that needed to be absolutely, impossibly perfect. A species of what humans might call crystalline energy beings if they were feeling poetic or insufferable glowing. Show-offs if they were being honest. The Vexthor didn't just engineer things. They willed them into existence music, with mathematics so pure that other species needed religious counseling after reading their blueprints. They'd been helped by the Caliph. Music, a race of floating brain cases with tentacles who treated quantum mechanics the way humans' music treated tic-tac-toe, and the rune HFT tall metallurgists who could smell the molecular structure of iron from 3-star systems away. Together, this trinity of overachievers had created the galactic standard for material certification. If the Vexthor Integrity Chamber said, your hull plating could survive deep space, then by all the gods of all the species, it could survive deep space. You could probably fly through supernova wearing hull plating certified by the chamber, and the only damage music would be a slight scorch mark that buffed right out. The chamber music worked on principles that made theoretical physicists giggle, and then immediately check themselves into therapy. It could simulate pressures that existed only in the hearts of dying stars, temperatures that shouldn't music exist outside of the first 3 seconds of the universe, and radiation bombardment that would make a nuclear reactor look like pleasant tanning bed. And it had never, ever failed music to render a verdict until 6 months ago. That was when the Talvorn Consortium had submitted their new alloy, a proprietary blend music of 17 different elements, 3 of which were only periodic table entries because the Talvorn had insisted very loudly at a committee meeting. The alloy was supposed to revolutionize colony ship construction, making hulls 30% lighter and 40% music stronger, which would save trillions of credits across the expansion projects of music. At least 60 civilizations. The chamber had accepted the sample, begun its testing protocols, and then continued testing, and kept testing, and was still testing music 6 months later, showing no signs of stopping or producing results. The sample wasn't failing. That would have been fine. Materials failed all the time. The chamber would music document the failure, explain in excruciating detail what went wrong at which molecular level, and everyone would move on with their lives, slightly educated and much poorer. But the sample wasn't passing either. It just sat there inside music, the testing field, while the chamber hummed and whirred and displayed readings that technically made sense, but didn't actually music resolve into a conclusion. Chief Engineer Vraxnon of the station, Certification Authority, and GT Music, and GT was an individual of the Carex species, insectoid, roughly 4ft music tall with crystalline compound eyes that could see in 17 spectrums and a disposition that suggested those 17 spectrums had all personally disappointed him. His carapace was decorated with 17 markers of academic achievement, which he'd acquired over a 70 career of never, ever bending a rule or cutting a corner. Vraxnon had been staring at the chamber's readings for 6 months now. He'd brought in specialists. He'd consulted the original Vexther engineers who had collectively shrugged, a gesture that looked disturbing when performed by glowing energy beings. He'd filed reports with the Galactic Standards Committee, who'd filed reports with their Oversight Committee, who'd filed reports with their subcommittees, creating a paper trail that could probably be seen from orbit. 47 species had pending music certification requests backed up behind the Talvorn alloy. Each day of delay cost approximately 1.8 million credits in holding fees, insurance premiums, and what one species called bureaucratic suffering expenses, which apparently was a real line item in their budget. The testing floor of the facility had taken on the atmosphere of a very polite funeral where nobody was quite sure who had died. Music engineers moved quietly between consoles, speaking in hushed tones, and GT music, and GT, as if raising their voices might offend the chamber into actually rendering verdict. Junior technicians music brought offerings of calibration updates and diagnostic scans like nervous priests trying to appease a deity that had stopped answering music prayers. It was into this atmosphere of genteel desperation that Marcus Webb walked every morning at 800 station time, carrying a travel mug of coffee that proclaimed Galaxy's okayest engineer in blocky human letters. Marcus was human, which already marked him as something of an oddity. Music in a facility staffed primarily by species that had mastered faster-than-light travel music before humans had figured out the wheel. He was in his early 40s with the kind of face that suggested he found most of the universe's problems. Music somewhere between mildly amusing and deeply stupid. His maintenance music uniform was wrinkled in a way that suggested either complete confidence or complete apathy, possibly both. He'd been contracted 3 months ago when Epsilon 7's regular maintenance staff had been overwhelmed by the sudden influx of engineers trying to figure out why the chamber was acting strange. Marcus came with solid credentials, 20 years maintaining everything from asteroid mining equipment to luxury yacht life support systems, and the kind of rates that made budget committees weep with relief. What he did not come with was any sense of occasion. While Vraxnon conducted his daily review of the chamber's status with the solemnity of a religious service, Marcus would lean against a railing and GT, music, and GT, drinking coffee and occasionally eating a sandwich, when senior engineers debated calibration theories in hushed, reverent tones. Music, Marcus would be checking the coolant levels and humming old Earth songs that nobody else recognized. The other species on station found music him baffling. The K-Rix valued protocol above all else. The rune treated every tool like a sacred object. The floating caliph approached problems with the intensity of monks contemplating infinity. Marcus treated the most sophisticated testing apparatus in known space like it was a particularly tricky vending machine. On the morning everything changed, Vraxnon was conducting his 183rd music status briefing. Gathered before him were representatives from 15 different species, all waiting for the news they knew would be the same as yesterday's news, which had been the same as music the day before's news. The Talvorn sample remains in testing phase. Vraxnon announced his mandible's music, clicking in what his species used to express profound resignation. Structural integrity readings music continue to fluctuate within acceptable parameters. Molecular cohesion shows no signs of degradation. Music, the chamber has now run 47,992 individual music test protocols with no conclusive result. Have we considered? Ventured a rune engineer, their deep voice rumbling like distant music. Thunder, that perhaps the alloy has achieved a state of quantum uncertainty, that it exists music in superposition between acceptable and unacceptable. We considered that in week 3. Replied Vraxnon, music, the mathematics don't support it. Alloy is definitively stable. The chamber simply won't confirm this. Maybe it's scared, said a voice from the back. Everyone turned. Marcus was cleaning a sensor array with a cloth, not even looking at the assembly. I beg your pardon. Vraxnon's translator made his confusion sound like polite music outrage. The machine. Maybe it's scared to make a call. Marcus took a sip of coffee. Just a thought. The chamber does not experience fear, Vraxnon said in the tone of someone explaining to a child that stars don't actually twinkle for fun. It is a deterministic system operating on established protocols. Sure, Marcus agreed amiably. How long's it been running? 10,000 standard years. Without a break. The chamber operates continuously. Downtime would compromise its calibration integrity. Marcus made a thoughtful noise that could have meant anything or music. Nothing. Is there a point to this inquiry? Vraxnon asked. Nope. Marcus went back music to cleaning the sensor. Just curious. The meeting music continued. Marcus continued his maintenance rounds, looking for all the world like someone utterly uninterested in the music. Crisis consuming everyone around him. But over the next week, and GT, music, and GT, A pattern emerged that only one person noticed. Pipit was a junior technician of the Qualicks species, small amphibious, with large eyes and a natural curiosity that their elders considered music. Undignified, they'd been assigned to shadow Marcus during his maintenance rounds, partly to learn human maintenance techniques, but mostly because they were too junior to be trusted with music, anything important. Pipit noticed that Marcus kept pausing during his rounds, just for a moment, near specific access panels around the chamber, and he'd tilt his music head, like he was listening to something. "What are you hearing?" Pipit music asked on the fifth day of this behavior. Marcus glanced down at the small alien. "You hear it too." "Hear what?" "That." Marcus pointed at music, the chamber. "There's a vibration. Happens every 47 minutes, lasts about 12 seconds. Pipit's large eyes blinked. They accessed their neural interface, pulling up the last month of acoustic monitoring data. The logs show no anomalous vibrations. That's because it's in the substructure, below sensor threshold, but it's there. Feel the deck plating." Pipit placed a webbed hand on the floor, waited. After 43 minutes, they felt it. A barely perceptible hum that traveled through the station's bones. "What causes it?" they asked. Marcus scratched his chin. "That's the interesting question, isn't it?" 3 days later, Marcus requested a meeting with Braxnon. The chief engineer agreed with a kind of weary patience of someone who had already heard 43 theories about the chamber's behavior and found them all useless. Maintenance contractor Webb. Braxnon said formally, "You have a concern to report." "More like an observation." Marcus pulled up a data pad. "I've been watching your machine for 3 weeks now. Notice something weird. The chamber's behavior as well. Documented music. As anomalous. Not that. The vibration music pattern in the substructure happens every 47 minutes, 12 seconds. Music duration, frequency oscillating between 17 and 23 Hz. Braxton accessed the data, his compound eyes shifting through multiple spectrums. Music as he processed. "Our sensors detect no such pattern." "Because you're looking in the wrong place. Your sensors are monitoring the NGT music. NGT harder testing field and primary systems. This is coming from the core processing matrix. The processing matrix operates at frequencies far beyond mechanical vibration. Yeah, but it's housed in physical components, and those components are resonating." Marcus pulled up his own scans, crude by the facility standards, but clear enough. "See, it's like a heartbeat, very faint, very regular. Machines do not have heartbeats." "No." NGT music. NGT, Marcus agreed. "But this one's doing something it wasn't designed to do. And that's causing physical stress in ways your fancy sensors aren't calibrated to detect." Braxton stared at the human for a long moment. "What is your background in advanced testing system architecture?" "None whatsoever." "And yet you presume to diagnose system designed by the finest music engineers of 3 species. I don't need to understand how it works to know when something's working wrong." Marcus leaned back in his chair. Look, I maintained mining equipment for 15 years. You know what happens when a drill assembly starts vibrating where music? It shouldn't. It means something's oscillating outside normal parameters. Something's creating feedback. The chamber has self-monitoring protocols that would detect music, any feedback loops, unless the feedback is in the protocols themselves. That made Braxton music pause. Explain. Can I see the original design specifications? That would require clearance. You don't possess music. Then I can't explain. Marcus stood up. But if you want my opinion, which you didn't ask music for, but I'm giving anyway, your machine isn't broken. It's doing exactly music, what it was designed to do. Problem is, it's been doing it for so long that it's learned music to do it too well. Machines do not learn beyond their programming. This one did. And now it's stuck in a loop trying to figure out something it was never meant music to encounter. Marcus headed for the door. But hey, what do I know? I just fix things. He left. Braxton sat in silence for 7 minutes, processing. Then he made a decision that would later appear music in cautionary tales told to junior engineers across multiple species. He gave Marcus music clearance to the original specifications, the design documents for the Vexter integrity music chamber filled approximately 47 terabytes of data, written in a mathematical language that music made standard calculus look like finger painting. Marcus stared at the music for 3 hours, understanding maybe 1% of the content. But that 1% music was enough. Pippet found him in the archives at 300 station time, surrounded by holographic displays that painted his face in blue light. You've been here for 9 hours, Pippet observed. Found something interesting. Marcus highlighted a section very deep in the system architecture documentation. See this? The chamber has adaptive learning protocols, not just for testing, for music. Everything. It was designed to optimize its own operations over time. That's standard for all advanced systems. Sure, but this thing's been optimizing for 10,000 years. Look at the version history logs. Marcus pulled up another display. The Vexter gave it a lot of autonomy. It's been rewriting its own testing protocols, refining music, making them more sophisticated. That should make it more efficient, not less. Right. Except Marcus traced a music pattern in the data. It's hit a paradox. The Talvorn alloy is exactly stable enough to trigger every single one of its test protocols music, but not unstable enough to fail any of them. The chamber keeps music developing new tests to try to find an edge case, but the alloy passes those too. So it develops music, more tests, and more. It's stuck in a loop of its own curiosity. Pippet's eyes widened. The machine is procrastinating. More like its music, so interested in this material that it doesn't want to stop testing it. It's the first thing in probably centuries music that's actually challenged the system, because it's been given so much autonomy over its music own protocols. Nothing's telling it to stop and make a decision. This is. Pippet struggled for words. The Vexter created a machine that's too curious. They created a machine that's too good at its job. Marcus closed the displays. And there's a simple fix, which is turn it off and turn it back on again. The that followed was profound. That's your solution. Pipet Music finally managed. Reset the chamber. Not reset power cycle. Full shutdown, clear the working memory. And GT music. And GT restart from baseline protocols. The adaptive learning is stored in persistent memory. But the current process loop will be interrupted. When it boots back up, it'll approach the Talavorn alloy fresh, without all the elaboration it's built up over 6 months. The chamber hasn't been fully powered down in 4,000 years. The shutdown protocols alone would take months of preparation. We'd need council approval, risk assessments, backup testing facilities, in case something goes wrong during restart. Or, Marcus interrupted. I could flip the breaker. We wait 5 minutes and flip it back. The Vexther built this thing to last forever. But they also built in emergency shutdown procedures. They're right there in the manual. He pulled up another document. Chapter 47. And GT music. And GT section 12. Emergency power interrupt protocols. It's literally music designed to be safely shut down in crisis situations. No one has ever used those protocols because no one's ever needed to. Until now. Marcus stretched. But hey, not my call. And GT music. And GT, I just maintain the cooling systems. Pipet stared at the human for a long moment. Then, against every instinct of self-preservation, music, and career advancement, they made a decision. I'm going to tell Chief Engineer Braxnon. Music. The emergency meeting was called for 800. The next morning, present were Braxnon, music, 17 senior engineers, 6 species, representatives whose tests were backed up behind the Talavorn alloy, and Marcus, who'd brought his coffee, music, and a breakfast burrito that smelled strongly of something the universal translators couldn't identify. Braxnon presented Marcus's findings. The assembled music group listened, with expressions ranging from thoughtful to horrified to deeply offended that music, a maintenance contractor, had diagnosed their problem. The human proposes, Braxnon said, his tone suggesting he was reading his own death sentence, that we perform a complete power cycle of the chamber. The objections came immediately and in multiple music languages. The risk assessment alone, unprecedented violation of operational continuity. My species has used this facility for 2,000 years without insulting to the memory of the Vexther engineers. Marcus ate his burrito. A rune engineer, tall and crystalline, turned to face him. You understand what you're suggesting? This machine has maintained perfect operation for 10 millennia. You propose to shut it down based on what? A vibration. Some speculation about adaptive algorithms. Marcus swallowed his bite. I'm suggesting you read the manual, page 208,047. The Vexther explicitly state that extended operation without maintenance music cycles may result in behavioral drift. They recommend a full diagnostic shutdown every music 1,000 years. We've exceeded that window by 9,000 years, someone muttered. Right, so you're due. Marcus wadded up his burrito wrapper. Look, I get it. This thing's been perfect forever. Nobody wants to be the person who broke it. But it's already not working right. You're not risking a music functional machine, you're trying to fix a malfunctioning one. The chamber music is not malfunctioning, Braxton said carefully. It is experiencing and GT music and GT unexpected behavior. If my car's engine light is on and it won't go music over 40 miles per hour, I don't care how technically functional it is, it's malfunctioning music. Marcus stood up. You want my professional opinion? The machine needs a reboot. You want my personal music opinion? You're all terrified of taking responsibility for a decision. So you're going to keep having meetings until someone above your pay grade tells you to do what you already know you should do. The room fell silent. That was inappropriate, Braxton said quietly. Probably. Marcus picked music up his coffee. I'll be in maintenance bay 3 if you need me. He left. The meeting continued for 6 more hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The math supported Marcus's theory. The specifications confirmed his reading, and every additional day of delay cost enough money that music, even the most cautious species representatives, were willing to consider desperate measures. 72 hours later, after emergency consultations with 3 oversight committees, 2 Vexter historical consultants, and 1 unfortunate intern who had to actually read the entire manual, approval was granted. Marcus Webb and GT music and GT maintenance contractor was authorized to perform a complete emergency shutdown and restart of the Vexter integrity chamber. The Hargelser gallery overlooking the testing floor was packed. Word had spread through the station and from there across the entire sector that someone was actually going to power down the chamber. Engineers who hadn't left their ships years made the trip. Species representatives came just to witness history. There was even a documentary crew from the Pan-Galactic Archives, filming for what they were already calling the day the standard stopped. Marcus arrived wearing the music same wrinkled uniform, carrying the same coffee mug, looking for all the world like music. He was about to fix a leaky faucet, instead of potentially destroying galactic civilization's most trusted certification system. Braxton had prepared elaborate ceremony protocols. There were speeches ready, and GT music, and GT contingency plans, backup facilities on standby across 3 star systems, emergency certification procedures that could music be activated if the chamber didn't restart properly. Marcus walked music up to the primary power junction, checked his data pad, and looked back at Braxton. Ready when you music are. You don't wish to review the procedures one final time. I've read them 6 music times. They're pretty clear. Sequence Alpha 7 Delta, hold for 30 seconds. Sequence Gamma 2, music echo. To restart, if I screw it up, the fail-safes kick in and nothing happens. And if the fail-safes fail, then we're having a bad day. Marcus popped open the access panel. But the Vexter built this thing. I'm betting their fail-safes don't fail. Music. Braxton looked at the assembled crowd. at the documentary cameras, at the future of galactic material, certification resting music on the shoulders of a human who'd spent the last decade fixing ice machines on mining stations. Proceed, he said. Marcus entered the shutdown sequence. His fingers moved across the holographic interface with practiced ease, not the delicate, reverent touch the other engineers used, but the confident efficiency of someone who'd shut down 1,000 systems and knew they all worked basically the same way when you got past the fancy displays. The chamber's hum, which had been the constant background noise of the testing floor for as long as anyone present had been alive, began to drop in pitch. The displays flickered. The testing field, which had held the Talavorn alloy sample in perfect stasis for 6 months, wavered like heat music's shimmer. Engineers gasped. Someone whispered a prayer in a language the translators didn't recognize. The chamber's lights went dark. The hum faded to silence. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Vexther integrity chamber was completely music, totally offline. Marcus checked his watch. 30-second hold starting now. The silence in the gallery music was absolute. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. The documentary camera's music captured what might be either a historic moment of innovation or a career-ending catastrophe. That music would be studied in engineering ethics classes for generations. Marcus ate a granola bar. Someone in the gallery made a strangled noise. And time. Marcus entered the restart sequence. Nothing happened. Then slowly music. The chamber began to hum. Lights flickered on in sequence, running through diagnostic patterns. The testing field shimmered back into existence. The displays lit up, scrolling through reboot protocols that probably hadn't been accessed since the machine was first activated. The diagnostic sequence ran for 3 minutes. The gathered engineers watched in silence as the chamber ran through its startup procedures, checking in, rechecking every system, validating its own integrity before resuming music operations. Finally, the main display pulsed green. A chime sounded, the Vexther music equivalent of a pleasant hello, I'm ready to work now. And then the chamber, and GT music, and GT running on fresh baseline protocols, without 6 months of accumulated elaboration. Grabbed the Talvorn alloy sample and ran its analysis. 47 seconds later, the results appeared. Certification approved. Material exceeds minimum standards across all testing parameters. Recommended for class A deep space. Construction. Detailed analysis follows. The gallery exploded with noise. Engineers were shouting, some in triumph, some in disbelief, some just to release tension that had been building for 6 months. The species representatives began immediately arguing about who got there. Tests process music next. The documentary crew was capturing reactions, already planning their editing sequence. Marcus closed the access panel. And GT music. And GT finished his granola bar and picked up his coffee mug. Pippet appeared at his elbow there, large eyes wider than usual. You did it. The machine did it. I just turned it off and on again. Marcus watched as the chamber continued. Processing, already moving to the next Sample in the music cue. See? It's happy now. Had all that clutter cleared out of its working memory, came back fresh. And GT, music. And GT handled the problem in under a minute. The chief engineer wishes to speak with you. I bet he does. Raxnon approached with a music expression that Marcus's understanding of Crix's body language suggested was somewhere between profound relief and existential crisis. Maintenance contractor Webb. Raxnon music began formally. Then stopped. Started again. Marcus. The chamber is functioning normally. It has already cleared 6 months of backlog in music, the last 3 hours. Your diagnostic was correct. Your solution was effective. Your methodology was, he struggled for the word, casual. Marcus suggested. I was going to say unorthodox, but yes. Casual. Raxnon's mandibles clicked in a pattern. That might have been laughter. You read the manual. Someone should. The Galactic Standards Music Committee wishes to offer you a position as senior consultant, full clearance. Music. 5-year contract, salary that I've been instructed to describe as very generous. Pass. Raxnon's compound eyes refocused in surprise. You're refusing. I like maintenance work, you know why. Nobody schedules meetings about preventive music, coolant replacement. Nobody forms a committee to discuss music calibrating sensors. I just do the job and go home. Marcus gestured at the chamber now, humming along perfectly. This was fun and all. But if I take that consultant job, I'll spend more time in meetings than actually fixing things. No thanks. But you solved a problem that the finest minds in the galaxy couldn't. I read the instruction manual that came with the machine, music. That's not genius, that's baseline competence. Marcus drained his coffee. Besides, you don't need me. You need someone on staff who'll check the maintenance schedules. The Vexther actually wrote instead of assuming the machine's so perfect it doesn't need maintenance. Get someone to implement those 1,000-year diagnostic cycles. Hire a few more people like Pippet here, who ask questions music instead of assuming everything's fine. You're serious. You're turning down music, what might be the most prestigious consulting position in the galactic engineering community. Yep. Marcus headed toward music, the exit. I've got a coolant pump in section 7. That's making a music, weird noise. Wanna actually fix that before it becomes a problem. He left. The gallery was still celebrating. The chamber was music still. Processing. Galactic civilization had avoided a certification crisis because someone had read the manual and suggested turning it off and on again. Pippet watched him go, then turned to Raxnon. Chief Engineer, I have a request. Yes. I would like to be music, assigned to review all maintenance protocols for critical systems across the station. I believe we may be overlooking recommended procedures across multiple facilities. Raxnon's mandibles clicked music. Again, definitely laughter this time. Approved. And Pippet. Start with the instruction manuals. Apparently, they contain useful information. 3 weeks later, a notice was posted near the Vexther Integrity Chamber in 37 different languages. The primary text read, scheduled maintenance shutdown, every 1,000 years. Refer to original specifications. Chapter 47. Below it someone, probably Marcus, though no one could prove it, had added in human English, or whenever. It acts weird. The chamber continued operating with perfect efficiency, processing, materials certifying alloys, maintaining the standards music that held galactic civilization together. But now it shut down once a millennium. For maintenance, just like the Vexther music had originally recommended, and everyone pretended they'd always known that was important. Marcus Webb continued his maintenance rounds, and GT music, and GT fixing coolant pumps and calibrating sensors and drinking coffee from his Galaxy's okayest engineer mug. When new contractors arrived at music, the station, they'd sometimes hear the story of how a human had fixed the unfixable machine. What's the secret? They'd ask, hoping for some profound insight. Marcus would shrug, music. Read the manual, do the maintenance. And if something's been working for so long that everyone's afraid to music touch it, that's probably your first clue that nobody's actually maintaining it properly. It wasn't profound music, wisdom. It wasn't revolutionary thinking. It was the kind music of practical, unglamorous knowledge that kept the galaxy running. The understanding that even perfect machines needed basic care. That instruction manuals existed for a reason. And that sometimes music, the most sophisticated solution to a complex problem, was the simplest one. The galaxy's finest engineers had built a perfect machine and then forgotten the most basic rule of technology. Nothing runs forever without maintenance, no matter how well you built it. It took a human eating a sandwich to remind music them. And in the great archives of galactic engineering, in the databases that stored the lessons learned from 10,000 years of technological music advancement, a new entry appeared in the section on system maintenance protocols, music. It was short, lacking the mathematical elegance usually required for official documentation, but it was flagged as required reading for all new certification engineers. Even perfect systems need maintenance, especially perfect systems. And for the love of all that's holy, read the manual before you assume something can't be fixed. The entry was attributed to Marcus Webb, maintenance contractor who'd already moved on to his next job. And GT music, and GT and wasn't available for the award ceremony they tried to throw in his honor. He was busy fixing a coffee machine on a cargo station 3 systems away. Rumor had it the coffee machine had been broken for 2 years, and 17 different technicians had failed to repair it. Marcus fixed music it in 40 minutes by replacing a valve that the manual said should be replaced every 6 months. Some lessons apparently had to be learned over and over. Music, again,